الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue this great explanation by the great Imam Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah, died 856 after the migration of our Prophet ﷺ, in this monumental work of his entitled Buloogh al-Maraam, obtaining the objective. We're still in the chapter entitled Kitab al-Nikah, the chapter of marriage. The time now is 7:24 p.m. Saturday, February the 3rd, the year 2024, the Gregorian calendar, which agrees that the Islamic calendar currently is the Laylat al-Ahad, the night of Sunday, technically, of course, with the Islamic calendar or the Islamic date, the 23rd of Rajab, عام 1445, the year 1445, after the migration of our Prophet ﷺ. We started the narrations, we started the new ones, but we are in the midst of explaining them. And we'll just name them quickly. You'll find that we explained the narration upon our mother, Aisha, radiallahu anha, قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أي امرأة نكحت بغير إذن وليها فنكاحها باطل 3 مرات كما كررها ذلك النبي صلوات الله عليه وسلامه وبركاته فدخل بها فلها المهر بما استحل من فرجها فإن استجروا فالسلطان ولي من لا ولي له, till the end of the narration that we explained. We said in regards to if the consummation takes place or if he becomes alone, as we'll talk about that in a minute again. But this narration we explained last class. We said if they differ, then the authorities, meaning of course the ruler, and his delegates, meaning people who work in the courts. Because we know that they're all delegates who have been entrusted by the Muslim ruler, especially those who are in charge of the courts and those type of affairs, meaning disputes that take place amongst the families, they are all resolved through them. Well, you'll find, like we said, in the Muslim countries, there are also other delegates that are made to handle these responsibilities within the society if marital discord or differing takes place amongst the family. But this is the narration we covered and we also explained. For the end of the hadith, if you look at it, it says, if they dispute or differ amongst themselves, for verily the sultan, the ruler, or the authorities is the wali. Is the wali of the woman or the sister for the woman who has no wali. For the woman who does not have any wali. We talked about in the non-Muslim lands, those who handle these responsibilities is the Masjid Islamiyah or the Marakiz Islamiyah. The Masjid, the Muslim Masjid, along with the Muslim centers. They are the ones, of course, that handle the affairs due to the fact that we know there is no wilayah, there is no wali as far as a non-Muslim. Because a non-Muslim cannot be the wali for a Muslim woman at all. We talked about those matters last class. So let's continue with the next narration we mentioned. Upon Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, this is the narration where we stopped at, everyone. لا تنكح الأيم حتى تستأمر ولا تنكح البكر حتى تستأذن قالوا يا رسول الله وكيف إذنها قال أن تسكت والحديث متفق عليه. We talked about this last class, and we said that the ayyim means a woman that was previously married. And we'll talk about this again, don't worry everyone. Al-ayyim means a thayyib, meaning a woman that was previously married, whether she be a widow or whether she be divorced. We also mentioned another detail to say that she had relations or intimacy before she was Muslim out of marriage, meaning zina, fornication. That also will be included. due to the fact that we know the virginity was removed, generally, بغض النظر عن هل هو محرم أو غير محرم, besides looking at the fact whether it was done in a legal, lawful, or unlawful way, the point of the matter is that the virginity was what? Removed. Based upon that, she would be considered what? Thayyib, or ayyim. Ayyim, as it says in the narration, that the Messenger of Allah والسلام, mentioned here. He said, لا تنكحوا الأيم. So, the Prophet ﷺ said that the ayyim is not married until she's consulted. And that the command is sought from her. And the command is sought from her, meaning her agreement to who she wants to what? Marry. And we'll talk about the reason why. And like we said, these type of narrations, everyone, is to clarify and establish that Islam does not force a woman in a marriage that she does not want, nor is she pleased with. And you'll find that Islam is not a male chauvinistic religion forcing women to do things against their will. And those affairs, like we said, everyone, in this regard, is negated, especially those enemies of Islam that come with all these different ambiguities in order to try to distort the light and the proper guidance of Islam. And we said, like we mentioned, that this narration refutes the mustashriqeen. It refutes the Orientalists. The Orientalists are those, of course, that they try to set out to instill doubts within the Muslims concerning their religion. But to the point that some of the enemies of Islam, you'll find that they say that the woman is forced in marriages that she's not pleased with, or it's against her will, and that's male dominant, male chauvinistic, and the woman has no choice at all in these matters. And you'll find that this narration, everyone, removes that ambiguity, removes that doubt. So these type of narrations and this type of knowledge can be utilized against those enemies that try, like we said, to distort the reputation in the light of Islam in order to say that this narration says that the woman has the choice. Because the Messenger of Allah, what did he say in this narration, everyone? لا تنكح الأيم حتى تستأمر. That the ayyim is not married off until she is what? Consulted. Sought from her command. Meaning she's pleased with who she's marrying. Then the Messenger of Allah in the narration, if you look, لا تنكح البكر حتى تستأذن. That the virgin also is not married until she is also sought from her what? Her permission. So this is to let one know that Islam, of course, allows the woman to marry who she is pleased with. Even though, of course, the wali also has his part and his responsibility in marrying her off to that individual. But we'll talk about in more detail, shedding some more light in this regard in a minute. قالوا, they said, Ya, O Messenger of Allah, how will we attain that permission from the virgin? He said, قال أن تسكت, that she remains quiet. And that hadith is muttafaqun alayh. So that narration, like we said, we were in the midst of explaining. Likewise, similar to this narration, let's continue. وعن ابن عباس رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال الثيب أحق بنفسها من وليها والبكر تستأمر وإذنها سكوتها. That the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, الثيب, and we said that the meaning of thayyib is similar to ayyim. The word thayyib, everyone, in regards to the meaning of it, means a woman that was what? Married. Or she experienced intimacy before. So it's not just an affair pertaining that she was previously married, whether it be a widow or whether she be divorced. We also said what is mentioned in regards to that particular ruling is that she also experienced intimacy. بصرف النظر عن هل هو محرم أو غير محرم, whether it be determined, whether besides just looking at the fact that it was done in a legitimate way or legalized way, or whether it was zina. And like we said, the woman who also falls into fornication before she was Muslim, or she might have been Muslim and not practicing. If she falls into zina, she's also considered thayyib, due to the fact that she experienced intimacy. That she experienced intimacy. And like we said, we're not looking at in this particular context of whether or not it was done what? Legislatively or not, or correct or not. The point of the matter is that her virginity was what? Removed. Her virginity was removed. Fine. So let's keep going. He said, a thayyib is more deserving of herself than her wali. And that the virgin is sought from her at command also, meaning her permission. And it was asked the Messenger of Allah, what is her permission? She said, her silence. Sukutuha. So, we'll talk about these details in a minute, inshallah. وفي لفظ ليس للولي مع الثيب أمر واليتيمة تستأمر رواه أبو داود والنسائي وصححه ابن حبان. Let's read everyone. There's another narration, another wording in regards to this narration that we just mentioned. It is not for the wali with a woman who's thayyib an affair. We'll explain this. What's the meaning of this wording? And al-yatima is also sought from her that command, meaning she's consulted. Meaning it's discussed with her. We'll talk about the meaning of these words in a moment. So it says that the woman, of course, pertaining to the wali, meaning it could be a father or all those other different relatives in her family, which we spoke about in the previous lessons. And we also gave great detail in this regard of who will be responsible, as we mentioned last class and in the previous classes. So if everyone wants to know who's a wali or who will assume the responsibility for the sister, then go back to those lessons in order to find the details, inshallah. But the wording in the narration of the Messenger of Allah in this context, it says, لَيْسَ لِلْوَلِي مَعْ الثَّيِّبِ أَمْرٌ, that the wali with the woman that was previously married or experienced intimacy before any command. What does that mean? We'll talk about that in a minute. It doesn't mean what you would think. Meaning the wali does not have a choice, meaning who she wants, he has to marry off. No, not necessarily. That's not the meaning of it. وَالْيَتِيمَةُ تُسْتَأْمَرُ, and the orphan, the female orphan, also is consulted. The female orphan is also consulted, meaning it's sought from her that command. It's sought from her that command. As it comes in Abu Dawood and the Sunan. All these narrations are authentic, everyone. So there's no doubt concerning its authenticity. The next word in the hadith, upon Abu Hurairah رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تزوج المرأة ولا تزوج المرأة نفسها رواه ابن ماجه الدار القطني ورجاله ثقات. Also upon the great Sahabi Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhr al-Dawsi رضي الله عنه, that the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام said, a woman does not marry to another woman. Meaning another woman cannot marry another woman off. لا تزوج المرأة المرأة, that a woman cannot marry another woman to another woman or marry another woman off. We'll talk about the details of this. And a woman does not marry herself off. She does not marry herself off to anyone. So this narration, this is what we started last class, everyone. So let's go back a little bit to the first narrations, what we discussed last class. We're going to give some details in this regard, don't worry. But we said from these narrations, if a woman, we spoke about if a woman marries without a wali. That's the first affair we discussed. So the first matter is in regards to a woman marrying without a wali, meaning without a wali, of course her Muslim family member. At the head of them is the father, the Muslim father. And what goes down his side. From the immediate family, of course, with her ikhwan al-shaqa'iq, from the blood relatives or the blood brothers, of course. And what comes from the father's side. So it could be from her immediate relatives, from her shaqa'iq, or ikhwanuha al-shaqa'iq, her blood brothers, from the same mother and the same father. And if not them from the father's side, of course. From, of course, abna al-ab, the children of the father, who's called al-asaba in the Arabic language, which is min jihat al-ab, from the aspect of the father, as we said. But anyway, the point where we're mentioning this, the Messenger of Allah declared that a marriage is invalid if there's no wali at all. If there's not a wali, the Prophet ﷺ repeated it twice. He said, Nikahuha batil, nikahuha batil, nikahuha batil. Her marriage is invalid, her marriage is invalid, her marriage is invalid, 3 times to put emphasis on the affair. So a woman definitely needs to have a what? Wali to marry her off to another man, another Muslim man, of course. So we said the affair with the Messenger of Allah ﷺ explained, and this is what we mentioned in brief last class. I'm not going to get too in depth with this. We said last class, everyone, if now the sister marries, and she has no wali, and she did not know, meaning she was ignorant. She was ignorant. And likewise, similar to that, the what? The man didn't know. So the narration that we mentioned last class is in regards to those who had no ilm. Hence, that if this affair takes place and they knew, this will be considered what? Zina. Because the marriage is invalid. Based upon that, it's as if we're looking at the affair based upon what? What is in their minds. Thinking that they're what? Or assuming that they're married because they think that being married without a wali is correct. So that's their what? Assumption in their minds, or that's what they're thinking. Based upon that, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ gave instructions. He said, if he has consummated وَهَا فَلَهَا الْمَهْرُ بِمَا اسْتَحَلَّ مِنْ فَرْجِهَا. If he now consummated, then she deserves that dowry completely. She deserves the dowry completely. Why, everyone? Due to the fact that she gave something precious to that man, which is her virginity. Based upon that, the woman now, as we said, everyone, based upon what will be given as a compensation in this regard, that she deserves the what? Dowry completely. She deserves the dowry. In addition to that, let's just say, for example, the consummation did not take place. And that what just had taken place was just mere seclusion, meaning he was alone with her without her overgarment on. You'll find that they say what is closest is that he would give her what? A half. He would give her a half. فَالْأَقْرَبَ أَنَّهُ إِذَا خَلَى بِهَا فَإِنَّ لَهَا نِصْفَ الْمَهْرِ لِأَنَّهُ اسْتَحَلَّ مِنْهَا مَا لَا يَسْتَحِلُّهُ إِلَّا الزَّوْجِ بِنَاءً عَلَى صِحَّةِ الْعَقْدِ عَلَى مَا فِي ظَنِّهِمَا. What is closest is that he became, or if he was secluded with her, meaning he was alone with her. As we know, seclusion with a woman is also considered secluded with a woman that's not your family, of course. Secluded with a woman that you, of course, marry, that affair is also great because all these matters become halal due to the marriage contract. Before, it's not. To be secluded with a woman that's not your what? Wife. And likewise, vice versa, to be secluded with a man. We're talking about the affairs of work and things of that nature, if one needs. However, if one becomes secluded, and of course they're thinking they're married, presumably, then in that regard, like we said, if he is alone with her and he did not consummate, meaning there wasn't any intimacy, then she deserves a dowry, half of it. She deserves half the dowry, half, nisf al-mahr. Just get a chair and sit in that one. So what he said in this regard, everyone, as we said from the narration in regards to what? If now no intimacy had taken place, but however he was secluded or alone with her, then we say that she deserves what? What does she deserve, everyone? She deserves what? She deserves a half. Good. Based upon that, that's what we said in this regard. تزوج الثاني هو الأصح. Of course, now this narration we talked about this last class, about if they argue, meaning they dispute, meaning those who are in charge of the female or the sister from her family. If some type of differing takes place between the father, let's just say, for example, and the paternal uncle, meaning the brother of the father. And we talked about this last class. We gave an example in order to clarify this matter by saying, for example, that the uncle wants to marry off to a certain individual. He has what they call kafa'ah, where he's kufr. We'll talk about the meaning of this in a minute. Kufr. Kufr means he's adequate. He's adequate. And we'll talk about the chapter that's going to come, inshallah, everyone, in the upcoming chapter, which is called Bab al-Kafa'a. This also is in marriage. Is kafa'a adequacy? Is it a condition in marriage or not? Is it affairs where the conditions are completely agreed upon or not? Some of them are, some of them aren't. Some of them will say in lineage, where if she comes from a high lineage, then he has to come from a what? High lineage. Is that a condition in kafa'a or not? The ulama say no. We'll talk about the narration. That's not necessarily a what? Condition. However, there are conditions in kafa'a where a man could be kufr, meaning adequate. For example, there has to be religious adequacy. There has to be. A man can't be praying and a woman is not. That affair will never work out. But due to the fact that she's not adequate, or if he's not practicing, then he's not what? Kufr. He's not adequate. So those matters we'll discuss. It's a whole chapter on it, and those details. But in this particular instance, as we said, everyone, the uncle might see him to be kufr, adequate. He has a job, financially stable, what have you, to the end of it. The dad just say, for example, well, I don't see it that way. Let's just say, for example, well, I don't like his father for some personal reason. Well, what does that have to do with the son? You understand? So the uncle might come in and say, well, what's the sin of the son due to the father? Well, that doesn't mean he's not a good person. You understand what I'm saying? So he might say in that regard, I think he's adequate. I know him personally. He's religious. He prays 5 times a day. He has a job. He has good manners. He has good etiquette, good dealings. Very truthful, honest, to the end of the praiseworthy traits that a person needs, right? Then the father, for some reason, said, listen, I'm not doing it. I don't like his father. I'm not doing it. Like, so here what had taken place, dispute. That's what it says in the hadith. So that's what's applied in the narration. فَإِنِ اسْتَجَرُوا فَالسُّلْطَانُ وَلِيُّ مَنْ لَا وَلِيَّ لَهُ. If they dispute, then the authorities is the wali for the one who does not have one. So that's the meaning. So the narration, when it says فَإِنِ اسْتَجَرُوا, if they dispute, returns back to the awliya al-fatat, or awliya al-mar'a. Goes back to those who are responsible for her, meaning those amongst her immediate family who are in charge of her affairs. Let's just say they differ in a particular matter, and as a result of it, one might disagree with the other as far as who they want to marry or marry her off to. Based upon that, let's just say this happened. I just gave the example. In that instance, the affair would be referred back to the what? To the courts or to the delegates of the ruler. They would now come in and they would study the issue to ultimately command, let's just say, for example, the father to say, your excuse based upon Kitab al-Sunnah is not acceptable. Whatever you have personal with the father does not apply to the what? To the son. So we tell you, let her marry him. Let the brother marry your daughter, for example. So now let's just say he takes it a step further. He raises the bar as far as in transgression. He says, if you marry my daughter off, I'm gonna empty a clip of bullets in your head. You understand? Here now the wilaya goes into what? Goes totally to the what? To the judge. Now it goes totally to the Muslim judge. Just to let you know how Islam is what? Perfect. How Islam and everything is systematic and it's in perfect what? Order. It's arranged and everything is put in its proper place. So now the hakim or the judge in the affair will now what? Assume responsibility. And he will marry her off. He will marry her off. Because it's not a what? It's not a justifiable excuse of why he should not marry her or why he should marry his daughter. It's not justifiable. Based upon that, like we said, but as for another instance, as we're going to mention, now let's reverse it. I'm going to give you a reverse situation. There was asked Ibn Uthaymeen about this particular example that I'm about to give everyone. أما إذا كان الزوج صالحا فلا بد من رضاها حتى لو كان السلطان هو الذي يزوجها. قال لكن المشكل إذا اختارت من ليس بصالح وكان أولياؤها امتنعوا على أنه ليس بصالح فليس للسلطان حق في تزويجها لأن استجارهم كان بحق. Now I'm going to reverse it. So you understood the first example I just gave a moment ago, right? Now I'm going to give us something the opposite. It was asked Shaykh Uthaymeen about this example here. He said it's clear in regards to a husband or spouse, if he's righteous we know, as we're going to talk about the narrations that we wanted to speak about, even if he's righteous, the woman still has to be what? In agreement. That's clear. Right, everyone? Even if the sultan marries her off. Right? Even if the sultan marries her off. So let's just say the authorities. The authorities are now assuming responsibility. Still, what is sought from her is what? Her agreement and her permission. Which is to refute, like we said, the Orientalists and the enemies of Islam, saying that the women are only forced or they're involved in arranged marriages where they have no choice, which is absolute what? Nonsense. We just brought the narration saying that affair is rejected. طيب. Let's just say now, it's mushkil. Let's just say she's pleased or she chooses a man that's not what? Righteous. And all of the what? Immediate family, from her father, her brothers, or what have you, or the paternal uncle, they all refrain, say no. Because the man is what? Not righteous. When we say righteous, let's just say, for example, he's not praying. He's not praying, or he's known to be involved in certain affairs that are not what? Not permissible or forbidden, or what have you. Here in this instance, even the ruler or his delegates, meaning the judge, of course, does not have the right to marry her off in that instance. Due to the fact that them differing is justifiable here. Their differing is what is justifiable. So the fact that a woman might just say she goes to the courts. Well, my father not marrying me off. My brother's not marrying me off. And the judge might say, okay, well, I'll assume responsibility. However, I'm going to speak to your father and your brothers. So they all come and they say, all of these unanimously agreed that we don't want to marry her off to this individual due to the fact he does not pray his 5 prayers. We never see him in the masjid. We see him on the internet doing such and such and such and such to the end of it. The judge sees that, he says, Khalas, you guys are what? Right. So it's not for me to what? Marry her off. Is it clear? Yes. So that's basically some of the examples we're given in order, like we said, just to make some more clarity in this regard. So if a man, let's just say, he's not praying, then we say he's laysa bi kufr. He's not what? Adequate. He's not adequate. Even if he has a lot of money. We'll talk about that also. It says, because some people might say, well, he has a lot of money. He's financially stable. Why don't you just marry off regardless? Even if he's not praying 5 times a day. Even if he's not fulfilling his responsibilities. Like, let's just say, for example, going to Jumu'ah. But he's rich. Here in that instance, we still say he's what? Laysa bi kufr. He's not what? Adequate. Due to the affair of adequacy in what? Religion. Adequacy in religion. سيبذل بالدراهم كثيرا قال أبوها. Like we said, we just gave the example. Alhamdulillah, we don't have to give that one. So let's keep going. طيب. So now we're speaking about the matters pertaining to a woman, meaning an ayyim, as we said in the beginning of the class. The ayyim. I'm sorry, everyone. I just skipped a couple of pages. Excuse me. Okay. Good. Alhamdulillah. طيب. So we just said that تنكح الأيم حتى تستأمر. That the ayyim is not married until she's consulted and it's sought from her that command. Meaning her agreement. What is the meaning of that? طيب, the Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام said, لا تزوجوا حتى تستأمر. والأيم, the meaning of the word ayyim, as we mentioned a moment ago, or beginning of the class rather, a woman that lost her husband. An ayyim فقدت زوجها. She lost her husband. Or you could say mar'a armal or armala. Armala also means a widow. So it can also mean a woman that was previously what? Married. You'll find in the next hadith, the Messenger of Allah used the word clearly by saying thayyib. There's another narration similar to this one that we mentioned. The word thayyib. Thayyib means a woman that was married before. Regardless of the situation, she experienced intimacy and that her virginity was removed. طيب. What is the meaning of the affair pertaining that is consulted from her or sought from her that command? What does that mean? Meaning of it is, everyone, is that the affair has to be made clear to her. Meaning that this man, given the details of him and his situation, that is given to her in a clear what? Manner. That's presented to her that this is who he is, this is a person, such and such, such and such. Are you interested? Do you agree? Do I now carry it all for you? Are you settled in this matter? Are you content with the affair? So we can what? Finalize it. And we can now write the marriage contract up and marry you to the end of it. So that is from the meanings of it. That the woman is not married. Notice the message of Allah said, La tunkah. The woman is not married. You'll find that they say that this type of sigha, or this wording that the Messenger of Allah gave, is what they call negation, which means an-nafi taqtadi an-nahi. That it's a negation that necessitates a prohibition, or its meaning is a prohibition. Meaning, as if it's the highest affair of a prohibition, to the point it's as if this affair it's as if the Messenger of Allah is saying this affair should not happen at all. That this is an affair that's established where a woman is what? Coerced or forced in a situation. To put this what? Emphasis on it. And we have the qaida usuliyah. The qaida which is in usul al-fiqh, which is called هل النهي يقتضي الفساد. Does a prohibition from the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, does it necessitate that affair is invalid? In certain instances, yes. I'm not going to get to the details of usul al-fiqh. But in this regard, certain commands or certain prohibitions of the Messenger of Allah, which will necessitate that affair is invalid, meaning it is what? It doesn't exist. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ is saying here that the woman that does that, or she's coerced or forced, then the marriage is what? It's not valid. It's not valid. So the nahi here, as they say, yaqtadi al-fasad. So the affair of the prohibition here, it necessitates what, everyone? The invalidity of that thing. The invalidity of it. She cannot be forced, and she cannot be what? Coerced. She cannot be forced in that particular what? Situation. So we just said, everyone, and I wanted to read something real quick before we move on. So that's the reason of what we clarify, to let one know, especially the enemies of Islam that try so hard to distort Islam in any way, shape, form, or fashion that they try to utilize against the Muslims. In that regard, we say these narrations clearly what? Establish the affair that the woman has her what? Choice. She has her choice. She's not coerced when the affair is arranged and she has to do it. Only in one instance, and we'll talk about that. There's an instance in that particular regard, which we'll speak in a minute. But the woman who has reached the age, of course, of puberty, she knows, even if she's a virgin, is sought from her that what? That command, meaning that agreement. That agreement. Like I said, there is one exception. We're going to speak about it. Don't worry. So, based upon this particular narration, what we extract from it is that, number one, that the woman has to be pleased. She has to be in agreement. Even if her father marries her to that individual, she has to be in a state of contentment of that individual. She cannot what? Be first forced or what? Coerced in that particular what? Instance or in that situation at all. And that the nahi and the prohibition of the Messenger of Allah that we said necessitates fasad, meaning the invalidity of that matter. We also said about the hadith, and we'll go on to the next one. When the Messenger of Allah said, O Messenger of Allah, what is the command or the consideration or the agreement of the virgin? He said, and taskut, that she remains silent, or her silence. Why is that, everyone? Due to the fact of a woman that's a virgin and that hasn't been affected by the Western environment, if she was left alone, where she wasn't exposed to all this nasty filth of the West, of porn and all the sexual type of influences, the woman, if her natural disposition was protected, she's very well shy. She's shy. If she has not been affected by the internet and all the filthy things that distort and destroy her shyness and destroy all of those matters, this is how she will what? Be. To the point where once she reaches a certain age where she does now start to have those feelings, if the affair was offered to her and presented, she will what? She'll probably be shy, very shy, her silence. So that's in order to establish in this hadith that the natural affairs that the woman, where her now, her natural inclination or disposition was protected, this is how the affair would be. In addition to that, we'll talk about in a minute, there's certain instances where a person might say, well, what if the girl cries? Or what if she laughs? Because there's certain situation where a female might say, and that might be considered a what? A type of what?
Form of shyness.
A form of shyness. Or a form of agreement, where she agrees. What do we say in those instances? We'll talk about that in a minute. Or what the great Imam al-Mirdawi mentioned in Saf about this particular matter. That if a woman is offered a marriage, or a virgin is offered a marriage, and she laughs, or she might react in a way where, or she might cry. Because certain women, of course, might cry either due to what? Great rejoicement. There's called happy tears out there. Where people are very happy to the point where they shed tears. So what about in that instance? All that we'll speak about in a minute. Is it clear, everyone?
Yeah.
But also the origin. Before we talk about the furu' or the far', the different branches of this type of affair, meaning of crying or laughing or what have you, the asl is that the virgin, she will what? Remain silent. That's the asl in the hadith that we just explained now. The asl is sukut, her silence. That would show her what? Agreement. That she's in agreement with that particular individual. طيب. The message of Allah ﷺ in the next narration, Abdullah ibn Abbas, if you look in your books, everyone, that the message of Allah called الثيب أحق بنفسها من وليها والبكر تستأمر وإذنها سكوتها. That the woman that was married previously or experienced intimacy before is more deserving of herself than her wali. Like we said, a person might understand that they hear this hadith, that what if she doesn't need wali? They might think, oh, she's more deserving of herself than the wali. Or she does not need the wali's permission. And if she likes him, khalas. He has no what say so. That's what one will understand. But that's not the case. We'll talk about that. That's what we'll speak about now, explain this hadith. He says, in the bikr, and the virgin is consulted. And it's attained from her that permission. And her permission is her silence. Her permission is what? Her silence. طيب. The hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, in this regard, everyone, what is the meaning of that wording? The meaning of that a woman that was married previously or experienced intimacy, being more deserving of herself than the wali, the meaning of it is that the affair of marriage is what? Goes back to her where she's consulted a very intricate consultation. Meaning, it's not enough to just say, for example, so-and-so comes with a marriage proposal for you. Do you give the what? The permission and that's it. Rather, you'll find that the wali will now put forth extra effort in clarifying the affair. Meaning, for example, you'll find that Ibn Uthaymeen says about this, saying, for example, he would go to the extent by saying, oh, he's young, or he's a sheikh alim, or he's someone he's a more older or middle age, but he's a scholar, or he might be ignorant, or he's financially stable, or he's impoverished, or he's someone of status, or he's a person that's not of status, meaning that he will clarify the affair accurately. That's the meaning of the hadith. And then when the Message of Allah said in the wording of the hadith that she's more deserving of herself than the wali, meaning of it is, if you want to write this down, that she's more deserving of herself than the wali, the meaning of it is that she's not married off until she is what? Consulted. She's not married off until she's consulted, and it is attained from her that what everyone? Permission. So that's the meaning of the hadith. The meaning of the hadith is not like we said that a woman takes on the affair, khalas, I like him, marry me off to him, I don't care what you say, you have no say so, I don't care, I like him. You understand? That's not the meaning. As we know, the wali also is involved. The wali, especially the father, are involved in these matters. Is it clear, everyone? And like we said, the fact that the father is involved is to show the protection that Islam gives to the woman to not be taken advantage of. Because we know women, especially these days, especially here in the West, where they are considered like what? Prey to the predators. Prey to the predators that want to what? Take advantage. And like we know, certain men out there are very well versed, very eloquent in knowing what to say to a woman to sing the right words. And some of them might be blatantly lying. But they know what to say in order to what? Get her in the position where her heart is attached to him. And then the father would come in and try to say, I can see right through this nonsense. But the woman now is now what? Connected. Her heart's connected with the man. That's the reason why Islam now makes the men in charge and involved in these affairs, because the men can see right through the nonsense. And similar to that, as I said this last class, the mother can also see right through the nonsense of women. Women could come, run this game and what have you. You bring them to the mother will be like, you really? They can see right through the nonsense. So that's based upon the fact that you'll find that from the great merits of Islam is that it allows men to come in and protect. Not in order to so-called dominate, but in order to what? Protect. To protect her. That men should be involved in affairs pertaining to what? Other men. And when other men, as we know, women are real emotional. Their hearts can be easily what? Attached. Especially if a man comes with all the what? Right words. And he comes with a good presentation. And he's well versed. He's very eloquent. And knows the right words to say. Until she becomes what? Attached to him. And he might, on the other hand, might not want good for her. He just want to utilize her for what? For the moment. For some temporary pleasure. And then after the affair is over, he's what? Kicks her to the curb. And she still now, her heart is attached to her, and then what ends up happening is her feelings are what? Feelings are hurt. And then she starts having issues with men. I hate men. Men are all to the end of it. That's the reason why we tell the females, fear Allah, in order to protect yourself, protect your feelings, protect your heart. Let the men be involved in your affairs in regards to relationships with other men. Because other men can see through the nonsense. When we hear it, we can hear the nonsense and we can see through the nonsense when people start talking about certain matters. And you might know something about the individual, or you can ask other men about the other individual to know whether or not he's truthful or is he just blatantly what? Lying. Is it clear, everyone? And that's the reason why, like we said, the men are to be involved. Especially in regards to these very vital matters, which is based upon it, building communities and relationships. So we said that's the meaning of the hadith. The meaning of the hadith, like we said, does not mean that a woman now disregards the wali. In regards to what the Messenger of Allah said, that she's more deserving of herself than the wali. Rather, the meaning is he's consulted or consults with her a very intricate what? Consultation. And that she's not married off until it is sought from her that agreement. Is it clear? Yeah. Jay, so let's keep going. Now we move on to the next narration where it says, وَفِي لَفْظٍ لَيْسَ لِلْوَلِيِّ مَعَ الثَّيِّبِ أَمْرٌ وَالْيَتِيمَةُ تُسْتَأْمَرُ. It is not for the wali with a what? A thayyib, meaning a woman that was previously married, any affair. We just also talked about the meat of this narration, right? We already talked about that. It is not for the wali with a woman, meaning that was previously married, any affair. We already talked about the meaning of that just a moment ago. He says, وَالْيَتِيمَةُ, meaning the female orphan is also what? Consulted. Just to give a little bit more detail, you'll find that the great Imam Shaykh Uthaymeen said about this also. He said, وَالَّذِي يَسْتَأْذِنُهَا أَبُوهَا أَوْ وَلِيُّهَا غَيْرُ الْأَبْ وَيَكْفِي فِي الْبِكْرِ أَنْ نَقُولْ خَطَبَكِ رَجُلْ كُفْرٍ. We talked about that. Alhamdulillah, we already spoke about that. He says about this, that the matter pertaining to the command or the affair has to be what? Clear and clarified to the woman as if she sees him. to know about his state completely, religiously, financially, everything is clarified there, to know what she's getting herself into. So that's what the meaning of the hadith is. He said, وَإِنْ كَانَ خِلَافِ ظَاهِرِ الْحَدِيثِ أنه لا يمكن الجمع بين هذا الحديث وبين ما سبق من النصوص الدالة على اعتبار الولي إلا بهذا التأويل. He said, and that's together between both narrations that we just previously covered, where the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said that the wali, there's no marriage except by what? Except with a wali and two upright witnesses. And in addition to gathering between this hadith here, to gather between them and saying that the meaning of both of them, that the wali has his role in the marriage, and also the woman has her role in it, where she was sought from her to have what everyone agreement. So to gather between both those narrations is what Ahl Ilm bring of clarity, that the meaning of it is that it's presented to her the picture or the state of this man completely. And to the point, like we said, if it's now to the end where everything is clear and she's pleased, you say, okay, sounds like a good situation. I agree. Is it clear, everyone? Yes. Good. Right, so let's move to the next one. It says that the wali with the woman who's a thayyib, of course, does not have any command, as we already just explained that. Right, what is the meaning of the word yatima? A person, of course, knows in the shara' the meaning of the word al-yatima, هي التي مات أبوها ولم تبلغ. The woman or the female orphan in which her father passed away or died, and she did not reach puberty. ولم تبلغ. She did not reach puberty. That's one meaning. That's one meaning, everyone. Number one. However, there's another meaning. هل المراد باليتيمة هنا حقيقة اليتيمة أو المراد باليتيمة التي لم تتزوج وهي قد بلغت قريبا. Now listen to the second meaning, because now it's going to attach to the meaning of the narration here that we wanted to speak about. What is it intended the second meaning? What's the second meaning? The yatima in which a woman did not marry. She did not marry. She did not marry yet. However, she's almost there. She's very close to puberty. Very close. بلغت قريبا. Or we could say, like we said, she just entered puberty. She just entered puberty. بلغت قريبا means the woman in which did not marry, however, she just reached puberty. بلغت قريبا. Not too far off, or not a far time, but she just, of course, reached the age of puberty. طيب ذلك لأن التي دون البلوغ لا يزوجها أحد من الأولياء. لماذا؟ لأن إذنها غير معتبر عند كثير من العلماء. That is because, of course, a woman now that's under puberty, of course, no one from the awliya will marry. We'll talk about this in a minute, because her permission now, in this regard, if she has not been influenced by corruptive influences, then in that instance, her to be consulted is not well considered. Why? Because she truly doesn't know what's going on. She don't understand. Is it clear, everyone? إلا بعضهم يقول يعتبر الإذن من السنة التاسعة ولكن أكثر العلماء على خلافه وعلى هذا فيكون المراد اليتيمة. So basically, just keep it to the point while mentioning this, just to keep everything straight to the point. The second meaning, what is intended اليتيمة البالغة القريبة البلوغ. He said the meaning of yatima in this context of the hadith here, everyone, البالغة القريبة البلوغ. The woman now that has reached the age of puberty just recently, meaning that time she reached it, and it was a long period of time until she actually entered the state of what? Puberty. That's the meaning. So is it the first one or the second? We say that the correct meaning here is the what? Second. The second meaning. Because someone would think that yatima means just a woman or female that lost her father. No. Here yatima in this context means, of course, the woman that just recently what? Entered the age of what? Good. Good. Alhamdulillah.
Or close to.
Or close to it. Exactly. In regards to, of course, to the virgin, like we said, that's under that state. We'll talk about that in the upcoming classes. That's going to come, inshallah. So the message of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, based upon what we just said, أما ما قبل البلوغ فليس لها إذن معتبر. So now we said, and we'll talk about this next class, about before the state of puberty. Then, of course, we know that she does not have any permission that's considered. We'll talk about that in a minute. Why? You just answered it. Because she doesn't what?
Understand.
She doesn't understand. She doesn't understand. Unless she was what? Exposed to the filthy ideologies of the influences of the West. A 5 or 6 year old be exposed to so much sex, she probably would be, oh yeah, you know what? I know what I want. You understand? But the affair, like we said, if it wasn't the case, before that age, she doesn't really what? She doesn't understand. So that's based upon that. In this regard, as we mentioned, the meat of the hadith. I'll read quickly what Shaykh Uthaymeen said about this. He said, وَذَلِكَ لِأَنَّهَا لَا تَعْرِفْ. Just like you said. That's because she doesn't know. صَغِيرَ لَا تَعْرِفْ مَصَالِحَ النِّكَاحِ. A young female doesn't know the benefits of nikah. For her, permission would be like it being non-existent. يَكُونْ إِذْنُهَا كَالْعَدَمِ. Her permission is like it being what? Non-existent. At any rate, he said, هذه الأحاديث كلها تدل على أنه لا بد من إذن الزوجة في إنكاحها. He said, at any rate, these narrations, all of it indicates that there has to be permission from the female or the wife here, not that wife, but the future potential wife, in order for her to be married off. Is it clear, everyone? Okay, so let's get to the next narration. We'll stop, inshallah. So let's move on. So all the narration so far, anything we need to clarify, or is everything clear? It's clear. Good. Next narration. Upon Abu Hurairah رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تزوج المرأة المرأة. This hadith is clear with Allah. Of course, a woman does not marry another woman off. One woman does not marry another woman off unless you're a liberalist here in America. That's something different, right? ولا تزوج المرأة نفسها. And a woman does not marry herself off. طيب. These narrations, we're going to speak about it quickly, then we'll stop, inshallah. Oh, wow, I didn't even look at the time. We almost finished, alhamdulillah. You'll find that the Message of Allah now brought the same sirah, the same wording that he did in the other ones. He said, لا تزوج المرأة. A woman does not what? Marry another woman off. Which is to let you know that he's bringing more emphasis. He did not say, لا تزوج. He's saying, this affair does not happen. In order to put emphasis on the affair of how what? Great it is. That this affair is unacceptable. They should not what? To those who believe in Allah on the last day, don't do this. Is it clear? So that's what's established, to put more emphasis on the matter. It says, أَلَا فَيَكُنْ نَفْيًا بِمَعْنِ النَّهِي. For the negation in this context here means a prohibition. It means a what, everyone? Prohibition. والخبر بمعنى الطلب يأتي كثيرا سواء كان أمرا أو نهيا. He said the Message of Allah is saying here a type of message that this affair is not from the sha'n or the affairs of the believers at all, that they won't do this if they believe in Allah in the last day. And in which the Message of Allah gave here a type of what? An instance where he's given news, but it necessitates that affair is not to happen, and one should not partake in it. ولو كانت بنتها فإنها لا تزوجها ولا تزوج نفسها حتى وإن كانت كبيرة عاقلة فإنها لا تزوجها. ولو وكلتها امرأة أخرى. جاءت امرأة إلى امرأة كبيرة في السن عاقلة رشيدة وقالت لها قد وكلتك أن تزوجيني فزوجتها قال لا يصح. So for example, even if, of course, the female, she does not marry, of course, any other woman off, even if it's the woman herself that, of course, in regards to marriage, she wants a marriage, or she's a so-called person that wants to take on the affair, none of it is what? Permissible at all. Even if she does have a what? Good understanding. Even if she's very intelligent, does not matter. The Message of Allah made it clear In that regard, even if she was to now bring some other details, let's just say she entrusts another female. Is it still correct? Still not correct. Even if she employs or now delegates for another woman to what? Be entrusted. In this regard, it's still the same hukum. Still the same ruling. Meaning, I entrusted you to marry me off. Or I entrust so-and-so from another sister to marry you off. We say what? Incorrect. And that the marriage contract, what everyone, is not what? Valid. لا يصح العقد لنفسها فلغيرها من باب أولى. If the marriage, of course, is not valid for itself, then other than itself is for all the more reason that it's not what? Valid. وهذا الحديث يضم إلى ما سبق لأنه لا بد من الولي. Due to the fact that we, of course, what is preceded, that the wali is from a what? Man. He's a wali. في النكاح. We already explained that. Is it clear, everyone? Yeah. So let's mention the fawaid and then we'll close out. This hadith, of course, from its benefits is that the message of Allah نهى تزوج المرأة نفسها وغيرها وعلى هذا يكون لها ولاية ولا وكالة في عقود النكاح. That the message of Allah prohibited that a woman marry herself off or another woman off. But based upon that a woman does not have wilaya. She cannot be a what? Waliya or a wakila. She cannot be a waliya or wakila or a munkiha or a muzawija. She cannot do that. In the affairs of the marriage contract, and we also said, what did we say in the previous classes? Nor can they be what? Utilized as witnesses. They can attend. They can be there. Let's just say you wanted to come in. I wanted to congratulate her and be around when the marriage happens, to give her a hug and congratulate. There's nothing wrong with that. We're talking about can women in marriages be utilized in order to validate the marriage contract? Can they be utilized as witnesses? We said what? No. We said no. In these particular contracts, no, at all. A woman cannot be utilized as the witnesses to validate the marriage contract. However, she can what? Attend. The reason why I'm saying that because a sister a couple of times, this was years ago, she said, well, I thought I can't attend because I can't be a witness. I said, no, you could attend. You could come. What's wrong? There's nothing wrong with that. We're talking about you being there to validate the what? The contract. To validate the contract. Good. وفوائد الحديث كلها, as we know from the benefit of a hadith here, is to protect the rights of the woman. That Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down these affairs in this order and in this system in order for the woman's rights to be what? Protected. In order for her not to be prey for the predators and to be taken advantage of. Especially if you look to the affairs of Jahiliyyah before Islam, of what happened. From the affairs of Jahiliyyah, that the fathers used to force their daughters to marry, of who they wanted. That they were taken advantage of, and that they were utilized as what? Mere sex objects, and that's it. And that they were taken advantage of, and that was their job, basically. They were to be taken advantage of and to be utilized as just mere what? Commodities, utilized for a price that's set, and khalas, do what you want. Those type of matters, alhamdulillah, Islam came and eradicated. Totally removed and decimated all the ignorant affairs where women are what? Taken advantage of. And that the men are involved in their matters in order for them to be protected. So they cannot be what? Prey for the predators. And how you'll find how the West here switches it. The protection for the women is considered male chauvinistic. Or misogynistic, they say? Misogynist. Or what have you. Misogynistic, male chauvinistic. Why the men got to be involved in my relationship? For your protection. Your father's around. And how many women out there have been taken advantage because their father's not around? A lot. So you'll find based upon that, how Islam had made these affairs in order for the woman to be what? Protected and honored and dignified. And presented in a dignified manner and be treated as such. And not to be treated, like we said, just for mere as a sex toy or sex gratification and pleasure. And then after that, she's what? Thrown aside. And that, like we said, and that's basically her function. طيب. From the fawaid of the hadith is mura'atu ahliyat al-wilayah. Taking consideration of those who are qualified to be awliya or walis. We talked about that. And we talked about previously that the one who handles this responsibility is the one who truly has to be what? Qualified, where they have the mind or the mind frame or the mindset to protect. It cannot just be he reached the age of puberty, but he really does not have the mindset to what? Protect his mother, or protect his daughter, or protect his sister, or what have you. You have some men out there that really does not have, they don't grasp the concept that I'm a wali and I'm supposed to listen to these questions and decipher whether or not they are what? Good. Or any affair that's not befitting, that, yeah, just fear Allah, I think that's too much. You understand? Just give an example. If they don't have that mind frame, then they cannot be a what? Wali or wakil. They have to have the mind frame to protect. They can't be in another room, as I said, playing video games and say, oh, my mom's in another room. Go ahead and sit with her. You understand? But in that instance, he cannot be a what? He can't be a wali. طيب. Last thing we'll mention. With فوائد الحديث الإشارة إلى قصور المرأة وأنها إذا كانت, and this is something I want everyone to be attentive of, لا يصلح أن تكون ولية على نفسها في التزويج. We already talked about that. فإنه لا يصح أن تكون ولية على غيرها في الحكم والإمارة. Now listen to this. Also it shows, of course, the قصور المرأة, that she's not fit for what? Certain positions. She's not fit for certain positions. Now listen to where I'm going to go with it. And if she's not fit to be a wali upon herself in marrying off anyone, then she cannot be what? A wali in other affairs. Now listen to this. في الحكم والإمارة. I was going to get some details in this. Now, this is the last thing and I'm going to stop. As far as the judging and leadership. However, now listen. ولهذا لا يصح تكون المرأة أميرة. For that reason, it's not, of course, valid for a woman to be amira. To be, of course, a ruler of the country. A ruler of a country. Nor, of course, judge. Listen up. Listen. أما أن يحكمها نساء في أمر بينهن فلا بأس. Now listen to this. As for if she's utilized to judge between women and certain affairs between them, and she's known to have what? Sound judgment? No problem. Between the women only. Oh, she could be, أن تكون مديرة لمدرسة نساء فلا بأس. Or she can be a mudira, a principal for the school of who? The women. No problem. You hear it? However, أن تكون لها إمرة على الرجال أو على العموم فإن ذلك لا يصح شرعا. He said, as for her having what? Total rulership of the land over men, or generally, for verily that affair is not what? Valid legislatively in the Kitab and Sunnah. Is it clear? Yes. Because like we said, she's not fit. You know, women have certain times in the month when she wants to be in the house and be alone. In certain times she don't even want people to be around her. Let me just be to myself for a minute and get myself together. I'm sure that everyone that has daughters and wives that have experienced relationships knows this. At certain times and certain days, women, they don't want to be bothered. Just leave me alone. I'm good. But just for these day or two, just leave me alone. Let me be to myself. And to zawija nafsaha. If that's the case, of course, she's not fit when she marries herself off, or waliya, or she's a wali for herself to marry someone else. All those affairs are what? Invalid and rejected in the Kitab and Sunnah. Is it clear, everyone? Good. We'll stop here, inshallah. Then we'll talk about next class, the hadith, what they call the prohibition, what they call nikah al-shighar. The different types of marriages that are impermissible. We'll talk about that next class. Any questions about the lesson, anyone?
Yeah, it was kind of where, as far as if a woman seeks to get married, as far as if she doesn't have a wakil, what if she picks anyone to be her wife just so she can get married, be sneaky about it. Is that?
That's what we talked about last class. We said, number one, these affairs, all of them are referred back to the Marakis Islamiyah, or the Masjid Islamiyah, or the Masajid. Those who've been appointed to handle those affairs, it should return back to them. If she doesn't have someone, a practicing Muslim male in her family, whether from her father or from her blood, immediate brothers, or the brothers from the father's side, or her paternal uncle who's Muslim, also who's practicing 5 times a day, praying. I have to mention all that these days, especially here in America. You have to mention all those details, all those matters. If she does not have that affair, and also another detail I forgot to mention, if he's incarcerated. We'll talk about this next class, because that's also a fact here in America. Father, I've even experienced this probably 5, maybe 10 times almost here in America, where you find that the practicing Muslim father is incarcerated, and he has a daughter. So a couple of situations were brought to me years ago, and the sister said, well, my father's incarcerated, or my brother who's practicing is incarcerated. So I'll say, well, you have to contact him first. Get in contact with him first and get his permission. And I want to see some proof. I hate to say that, but you have to. Get some proof, whether it's a letter where he says, I give permission to the masjid to handle my daughter's affairs. Or something that can validate the fact that he authorized it. Whether it be the father or the brother or what have you. So I always say that. I say, if he's in charge of your affairs, or if there's a phone call that can be made, I can speak to him. Well, I authorize you, the imam or masjid so-and-so, to handle her affairs. All right? That's the first thing. So it's not for women now to go around wakil shopping. Okay? Wakil shopping. What I mean by that, the backdoor marriages where you'll find that the brother, and there was some shystiness going on, the affairs that weren't clear, and then people know it, and think, based upon my years in Dawah, which has been a long time, I've seen so many strange things, trust me. And I get a smell, inkling, whiff of something very shysty is taking place. I always smell it. Oh boy. Oh, I have this sister. I have this sister, and I have a friend of mine. No, you can't do that. You understand? My man right now can marry her off real quick. We're good. No. Sister, take your affairs to the proper what? Take it through the proper channels and sources. So you don't be what? Taken advantage of. Because now the man will get what he wants, which is just mere pleasure, and after that is what? It's a bunch of problems. And in certain instances, she's pregnant, and he divorced her. And I don't know why brothers do that. That was your intention. What did you get her pregnant for? You made something evil more evil. Now there's a baby and there's another life involved. So it's more complicated problems accumulated one on top of the other. So that's the reason why, sisters, to avoid all this nonsense, take it to what? The proper sources. The imam might appoint someone, of course, or there's been situations where a sister might come to me and she'll say that, well, my friend's husband, they've been well acquainted maybe for 10 to 20 years, let's just say. 10 to 20 years, can he be but would kill? Due to the fact that he knows my situation, he knows what happened, she knows my family, they're very close, or what have you. Let's just say. Here she still would have to obtain permit still, I would have to what? Or the imam or what have you would have to what? Get permission, and I will authorize it. They say, okay, well, you've been appointed. Is there a problem? Everything okay?
Yes.
Okay. Like salam. That's everybody kept looking. So, based upon that, the imam will now what? Authorize. They say, okay, that's the case. It seems like you are more fit rather than someone appointed at the masjid. Because sometimes, brothers and sisters, people who's listening online, sometimes the awliya, the wukala, people who are wakils are overwhelmed. So they don't know these sisters. And vice versa. They don't know the brothers either. So they're just basing everything based upon what they know of what's in their hudud al-ilm, of the knowledge that they have, which is not much. Because there's no way that you can have intricate knowledge of people's certain affairs, and you're in charge of all these people at the same time. There's no way. So, based upon experience here, if you mean it for myself, if a sister come to me to say, well, there's someone in my family that knows, or someone that knows me very well in regards to certain arenas, my best friend has been my friend for 20 or 30 years, their family knows me, can he be the wakil for me? And of course, the Malakas Islamiyya will authorize it. And I've even been in that position. I said, well, he knows you better than me. He knows you better than me, then I'll appoint him to handle your affairs. I said, well, let me come and meet him. And I'll meet him. And of course, it's clear that he's practicing. He has a beard. He's coming to the masjid. He looks like he's praying 5 times a day. Of course, he has all the traits and the qualities that we see. Or it's somebody we know, usually, in most cases, somebody we know. In that particular instance, that we say, well, actually, can we appoint you? Because you know about her affair better than us to know what's fit for her and what's not. He said, yes. So that's the reason why. For someone to know her situation more in depth, in order for her to receive the proper situation, or he might be able to tell the brother who's interested about her more than me, because he knows about her more than me. And he'll say, well, I know based upon her previous situation, her previous husband, this happened, and this happened, that she does have 2 kids. Her 2 kids is like this, such and such. He can give some more of a picture clear than I can. And like I said, the wukala of people who have been entrusted over these sisters, they don't really know them. They don't. To a certain extent. But ultimately, you don't know the intricacies of what they do in their homes. They don't. A person can be very religious openly, but in the house, they're a totally different person. Even brothers, same thing. It could be someone come to the masjid, looks like he's practicing. But I tell the women, the sisters who's interested in marrying, I tell them frankly, I don't know how he is in his family. Because a man can be religiously in the masjid, but how he treats his wife, total different situation. So I always tell that to people all the time. As far as in my regards, the knowledge of certain individuals, this is why I know. I don't know how he treats his wife. I don't know how he does such and such in this regard, but I do know he comes to the masjid. I do see him in class to the end of it. And that's the reason why we tell people to come to class, because we truly don't know who's who. Especially these days after COVID, sisters ask me, do you know anybody to get married? You know what I was like? No, I don't know anyone. I truly don't. I don't know anyone. You understand? That's the reason why we tell people to come to the class, be more involved in community, so we can get insight of who's who and what's what, and know what's going on. So people want to get married, we know these people, we know these individuals. But other than that, we truly don't know. Men come, they want to get married, we marry them off. Like we said, I'm very careful when I say my words. Sister, I don't know how he is in the house. I have no idea. You understand? And that's it. So that gives me my exoneration, right? What do they call it? What do you call me to exempt, to vilify yourself? I mean, to exonerate yourself from a situation. What do you call it? Disclaimer. No, I'm just messing with you guys. Fight. We'll stop here. Anything else?
The woman that's called a thing, the one that's been previous married, she has to be consulted a lot. You said because
not a lot, but she's to be. The consultation has to be in detail.
Why not the virgin? Because she's...
Same thing, yeah, of course.
Okay, all right.
That still applies.
All right.
Absolutely. The thing is, why the message of Allah negated that in that instance is because certain times, certain virgins, they're very shy to get in depth about certain things about men. You understand? And she's like, whoa, I don't know about that one. Right. A woman that's been previously married, she knows exactly what she wants.
Right. She knows.
You understand?
Right.
That's the difference.
Okay.
But still, she still sought from her what? Her permission. Right. She can't be coerced.
Oh, of course. Right.
That's the difference. Anything else, anyone? We'll stop here, inshallah. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت استغفرك واتوب اليك.